This is Firebase. I'm your host, Gary French. Recently, I had the chance to talk with a gentleman who's a dear friend, Joe Dedman, with Monty's Natural Plant Foods. And we talked about the food shortage supply in the United States, the baby formula shortages. We spoke about fertilizer. We spoke about a plethora of topics as we were discussing some of the things that are going on in our nation. As we went through the course of the show that evening, one thing struck out in my mind. Well, several things. One is that Joe knows exactly what he's talking about when it's dealing with agriculture, with farming, and with the farmers and the needs that are happening in America today. We also talk about supply chain issues, and I thought let's ask Joe back so that we can talk not only about that but a couple of other issues that I think are pertinent and valid news topics today. I wish I could say it like that great former and hopefully future president Donald Trump would say China, but I can't say it like that. But I think there's some connection with China in there as well. Joe, welcome back to the show. Glad that you are with us once again this evening.
Thank you.
You know, I've got my notes here, and on the previous show, I'm one of these guys that over prepares, and you've known me long enough that I draft a lot of stuff and I write a lot of things down, and I pulled out some notes that we had from a previous show, and here's one of the things that I just want to read and then have us take a look at. And it's dealing with America's baby formula shortage. And they're calling it a crisis. And from the previous show, we had a video clip of a farmer that was talking about it's a real crisis, the food shortage. You even commented in a previous show that there's probably a 30 or 60 day supply of food in the United States, worldwide. Which is stunning to me.
It is.
That everybody thinks they run down to the local Walmart or Kroger, and I tell you what's stunning to me is people they'll go buy ground beef, and you try to tell them that it comes from cows, and they say, "What? It's from cows? Isn't that just?" And how do you grow it? It comes in wrap. Well, that's another.
I hear you.
There's a friend of mine that says some people. Today, and this comes from our educational system, and if you want to write me, go ahead. I'm just not going to pay attention to it. He said we've got a lot of people come through the government-run school system that are dumber than hammers, and unfortunately, if you think hamburger comes grown, Anyway, this was a letter that Pelosi sent out to fellow Democratic colleagues that indicated that she's trying to get the House of Representatives to consider a bill that will give emergency authority to the WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children, for them to address supply chain disruptions and recalls that led to the shortage. Well, what happened to the Secretary of Transportation, little Petey Buttigieg, So anyway, they're going through this, and I was reading through this, and Elise Stefanik was talking about money that they're sending Ukraine, and the Democrats are going a different direction. And it's like America is burning up in flames while Nero Biden is fiddling away. Here's the direction that I'm ultimately getting to. Is there a real connection with food shortage and China? Is there a real connection with fertilizer issues and China that we're just not very up to speed on?
I think there truly is, because our eyes are just now beginning to be opened about all of the things that we are so dependent upon coming out of China.
Yeah. So what are some of those things you're talking about?
Well, in our industry alone was some additives that you put in micronutrients for the farmers that make it perform a lot better.
Right.
And farmers need that. They want it to go into the plant faster, quicker, better.
Does that help the soil recuperate as well? Does it help the plants grow?
Well, it helps the plant mainly because it can take in that nutrient and respond quickly to help them maintain the yield potential that they're after.
Sort of like an IV infusion
in a
or
way.
something.
Yeah, in a way. And so China.
I'm sorry, Joe. I've always told people I'm not that bright, so I need to understand that, Joe.
But China has restricted sending that into United States, which has made a shortage for the farmer.
Ooh.
And then he goes, well, where do I get what I need? Well, we have to really hunt high and low at different companies to try and find that product,
Right.
and then supply it to our farmers. So there's not only that, plastics. We're all, we know plastics are out here where, well, I did not know until recently. In fact, last fall, we are very dependent upon China to supply the polymer that they use to melt down or initiate to form plastics in our industry. It's the jugs. It's a big tote of plastic that holds the liquid.
What about milk jugs, too?
Same kind of thing. And so we ran into a shortage of getting those to put the product in to send to the farmer, and we had to hunt high and low to find that as well. And, of course, guess what happens? When all of this is happening, it creates the opportunity in many instances for that person to charge a whole lot more money.
Wow.
Because guess what? I heard the word shortages, and I have it.
Yeah.
So I can charge you more for what you're looking for.
Right.
Which now has to be shuffled down to the farmer, and then he has to absorb the cost. And it's terrible.
Well, a couple of years ago at the start of the pandemic, you couldn't find bleach or Lysol spray, toilet paper, hand towels.
Yeah.
And it was like, I remember going to a grocery store, and people had carts. I mean, carts loaded with toilet paper.
Yeah.
Folks, you would have thought that there was a pandemic of diarrhea. People were buying so much toilet paper, which is phenomenal. Why do you think that it is, when people hear that, since you brought it up, shortage, that they seem to just panic?
Maybe we have been brainwashed here in the United States of always having anything in the world I want, I drive down to get it. And then somebody says somewhere, I mean, this could literally, you and I could probably start a shortage today if we just mentioned, hey, there's not going to be any more milk. Well, guess what? The dairies didn't close.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the panic will ensue, and they'll go, oh, I better go get it while I can.
Yeah, I heard there was a shortage on chicken livers, matter of fact. So,
very possibly.
Just saying.
Yeah. The same thing. They don't even think that through. Because guess what? I'm going to buy a bunch of milk or chicken livers. I can't eat them all that fast.
When did the American farmer become so dependent upon China?
It kind of snuck in our back door, to be honest with you. We weren't aware that we were so dependent upon China. And I think I told you earlier that we didn't even know for a while. But China came over here and bought up a lot of American farmland, and our government allowed it.
Yeah.
They bought up a lot of meat processing companies, Smithfield being one of the biggest in North Carolina that processes hogs.
When you told me that the Chinese had bought Smithfield, that I was stunned.
Yeah.
When did that happen, and why in the world did we let that happen?
Well, it happened about 3 or 4 years ago, and that was my question then. Why did our government allow such a thing to happen? Because now you've given control to an outside country of how to control things inside our country that makes us dependent upon them, and now they have the upper hand, and we can start paying a lot more for pork chops or anything else in the grocery.
Yeah, I've heard some politicians, some years ago, I heard Representative Thomas Massey talking about the lobbyists controlling a lot of the bills. And matter of fact, Congressman Massey, in full disclosure, is a friend of mine. He said that a lot of the lobbyists are the ones who write the bills and push them through.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that there's a big movement of lobbyists from the Chinese, and it almost sounds like secret agent stuff.
We never realized it for quite a while because guess what? We're living in the land of plenty, so we don't usually question hardly anything. But lobbyists in our country are really in big control of our government, and yet our government lets it happen Because guess what? They get a lot of
Yeah, I mean, you
green
read
things.
Joe, you read my mind. I remember being in the military, and if you wanted to try to get a good
Yeah.
transfer to a post that you wanted to be in and have a decent posting somewhere, you would talk to the personnel
Right.
people, and they'd talk to their personnel people. And our personnel officer would say, well, let me see if I can grease the skids for you on that. And really it came down to is that military lobbyists trying to help a military member. And if that happened then so many years ago, it seems like it's on warp speed now.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is. It's going at warp speed. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Are people you think this is just conjecture and we're supposing it. Do you think that we have some politicians that they're just being paid? Aside from our tax dollars paying them, which, by the way, we're charged too much taxes and we're paying the representatives too much money anyway. Here's another topic for you. How is it we elect them to office and they retire as millionaires?
Yeah. So add that math up.
I know. Joe, I was taking time away from you there, friend, and I apologize for that.
All right.
Hey, listen, we're going to be taking a short break here in just a couple of seconds. I want you to come back. We're talking with Joe Dedman from Monty's, and we've talked about food shortages and fertilizer, but when we come back, we're going to be talking about hope, how we can get over this. Welcome back. Glad you stay tuned through that short break. Continuing our dialogue with Joe Dedman here as we've talked about food shortages and fertilizer concerns. And one of the things that struck me earlier when he told us that worldwide there's probably a 30 to 60 day supply of food. Now you have to realize that is if all of the food and all the processing and all the farmers stopped right now, we'd have probably 30 to 60 days. That's stunning to me as well. Joe, do you encounter people that's shocking to them when you tell them that, or did they look at you and say, "Oh, get out of here"? No,
it's not a reality for people to think about because they always have plenty. I mean, and when they go to the grocery and there's plenty on the shelves,
right?
You can talk to them all day long till you're blue in the face, and they'll go, "No, that can't be happening. That won't happen."
Yeah, you know me well enough, and I know you that the most important part of my life is my faith. I make absolutely I don't make any apologies for my faith.
Right.
My faith and my politics can't be separated.
Right.
I believe in the churches today we should talk about not only biblical issues, but we should talk about political issues. Because, friends, if we do not, which is what the left wants us to do, they want us to remain silent. If we don't bring our faith into the political arena today, we will not have the opportunity to talk about our faith, even in the confines of our church. And Joe, that leads me to this thought. We were talking earlier about the new government disinformation governance board, and Joe Biden has appointed a real loony person to head that up. A very anti-American, anti-Constitution, anti-Christian person to lead that.
Yeah.
And I have to always write it down. Disinformation Governance Board. And it really reminds me of the George Orwell book, 1984, where in that book, Orwell was talking about the ministry of truth. And when we say things like the ministry of truth, it sounds so nice. But what it's all about is that other people outside of the Bible or outside of what is really truth, they will define for you what is truth and what is true or what is real. And there's a danger in that. Joe, are you encountering people today that find it hard to believe? As an example, when you talk about food shortage, they say, that's not possible. And are you able to convince them of that?
It's a tough thing to convince people of that because they're so sure of what they see visibly and physically and even what they've experienced over the years. But then I'm like you. I say, well, I found all of my things out of biblical principles. And when you go and read, especially in Matthew 24, where Jesus tells us these things are going to be happening in the end, and we're literally beginning to see them now, and that is the huge leap of faith for other people even though they're Christians. And we
Right.
have a lot of Christians that attend churches every single Sunday. And yet they're either the pastors are not telling them, or they're not reading their Bible and
Right.
telling it.
Right.
But yet everything is showing us today and pointing to the signs that the greed has come. People love money way more
Wow.
than they love people or concerned about people. When you and I grew up, we grew up in a community that took care of each other.
Yeah.
Today, that doesn't hardly exist.
You can leave your house unlocked. You leave the keys in the car.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm sorry, but America today is missing so much of the great childhood that I grew up under, you grew up under,
Right. Right.
that actually instilled that faith within us to trust God's going to watch over us. God's going to take care of us as long as we worship Him, give Him
Right.
the opportunity to do things in our life. He will amaze us
Yeah.
all the time.
Do you think that's part of the reason is because people somehow pretend that they're smarter than God? I mean, if they believe in God, they think that they're so much. And you think about this: if there is a God, and I believe that there is, how smart He must be
Oh, my, yeah.
to just say, "Let there be light," and there's light, and then He
Yeah.
provided the resources for the fruit trees and the soil and all that. Why do you think there's such a hesitancy for people to accept the truthfulness? If we're going to talk about the ministry of truth, and it's not a church position. Why do you think there's such a hesitancy for people to accept? And I'll just be very clear: Jesus as the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. We were actually talking about that Sunday school Sunday, that even though technology is such a good thing, we literally thrive on technology today, but technology is in a way leading us away from the biblical principles,
Right.
allowing us to believe, to trust in what we see, what we read,
Yeah.
and yet we're
Yeah.
not reading the truth, which is the Bible, the words of Jesus. And yet those are the things that you need to lock in on. So even though you hear these things in the news or in the media or so on, take it back and compare it to biblical truth. That will weed it out immediately that I am putting too much stock in what I'm seeing on internets, because you know as well as I do, they can put anything in the world they want on the internet.
Yeah.
And they can say anything
Yeah.
in the world they
Yeah,
want. But not
exactly.
all of it is truth.
Yeah, yeah. We can go back to the French Revolution. We can go back to the
Yeah.
1800s with from the 1700s, 1800s, and the humanist movement, and the idea and the idiom "I think, therefore I am."
Yeah.
I just would like to say it like this, the way Popeye the Sailor would say that. I am what I am, and that's all that I am.
Yeah.
And we as kids, we say, you're a yam. And so if I think, therefore I am, what am I doing to myself? Am I displacing the place of God? Am I ignoring Him? Am I saying that I am divine myself?
Possibly. I mean, that can come over into somebody's realm of thinking,
Right.
that look what I have done for myself. And they never, and most, I don't say never, but most time they never give God the credit for have placed people in their lives, things in their path that brought them to the point they are today, which many of them lack for nothing.
Right. Right.
Even though you're in poverty-stricken zones, we still have way more than any other country in the world.
Yeah.
And yet we develop this scenario in our brain that, hey, it's I've done this.
You know, Joe, your family owned a dairy farm
Yeah.
for about 150 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was around before the Commonwealth of Kentucky was the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Exactly.
And sadly, it was left to you to have to close it down because you just couldn't compete with the big boys undercutting the price of milk.
Right.
You know, when I talked to Joe about agriculture, about farming, about dairy, here's a man that's he's been there and he's done that. Here's a guy who's had his arm up the south end of a cow to make sure that it could give birth, and you've seen all the things you've talked about. those things, and we got about a minute here before we have our break. How has those things led you not only to the business you're in now, but to affirm in your knower that there is a God and you're not God?
Oh my. I mean, every single day on the farm always challenged you to put your faith in the Lord, that I can't do this,
right,
Lord. I need your help. And he always has come through in every circumstance. I mean, the neat part is you look backwards in your life and you start seeing milestones. God was there. I didn't know it, but he was there. Now I see it, but then I didn't because I was in the middle of the circumstance.
Wow.
But when I get through it and I look back and I think, thank you, Lord. You did get me through all of that.
Wow.
And I survived. So it's just neat things.
You've been able to see the divine connection between, a calf being born to planting crops and now getting to travel the nation and even to a lot of foreign countries, helping farmers.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to a divine, it's almost like it's been a calling for you, Joe. To take
it really has.
Okay. Folks, we will be right back talking with Joe Dedman this evening, talking about a lot of things. We're going to close this show out tonight by giving you a sense of great hope. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Thanks for spending your evening with us as we've had our guest, Joe Dedman. He's been on the show before. We've had another interesting show. We've talked about some political concerns, about spiritual concerns, of course, fertilizer and agriculture, and we've talked about China. I want to wrap up this evening talking about a couple of things that have sort of hit close to, and that's dealing with what's going on in our land right now. And we've talked about what's going on from a political perspective or a geopolitical understanding, a shortage of food, shortage of fertilizer, China working behind the scenes, and nowadays it doesn't seem like they're behind the scenes, they're out front. Seems like politicians are beholden to the lobbyists and to China, and I'm just stunned by all that. And what I'm also stunned is sort of like the words of the Apostle Paul when he wrote to the church at Galatia in chapter 1, verse 6. He says, I marvel, I'm stunned, I'm shocked that you so quickly turn away from the gospel of Jesus Christ. And here's what I want to make that connection. You have quickly abandoned what has brought you great joy. Joe, does it seem like in our land today that we've been a very prosperous nation? We talk about the shortage of baby formula, and you and I commented during the break, what would our parents have done? What would our mother have done? Yeah. Oh, no, I guess our little kid's not going to make it. We don't have any stuff to mix up. And I know that sounds crass and cold, and I don't mean it to be that way, but why do you what's the real problem? What's the real issue going on in our land today?
It's just mainly because people have been hearing from so many other people and not thinking for themselves. When you stop to think about common sense stuff, well, how does other animals feed their babies?
Yeah.
Well, milk, goat's milk, all kinds of milk will sustain a child or even and provide nutrients. But there's other alternatives. But to just put all of your stock in, I've got to have this baby formula.
Yeah, Infamil. I can't have.
And so, you got to think outside the box. This is one of the things that amazes me with farmers.
Right.
Is whenever an adversity hits us, we have to think outside the box. What would I do that I don't normally do to get me through a situation or actually wrap up what I need to do for this season?
Right.
So I love it when I deal with farmers and we talk about things that let's think outside the box. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. They've never done it before.
Yeah.
And yet it proves out to be exactly what they need.
Well, what you're saying is that they're not so problem fixated. They're more let's work towards a solution. Solution. And that's one of our themes at Monty's is we say, you have a problem, we have a solution. And we go about it from those standpoints. Everybody has problems. You mentioned that I got to travel all over the world. Yes. And all farmers throughout the entire world almost experience the same kind of problems. Wow.
But there's always solutions if they're willing to go there and do that and think outside that box. There are solutions.
Yeah.
And so as the American public, we have become so ingrained in this is how it has to be that I don't think outside the box, including what we become now so accustomed to with politics. Look, if you want to change, you've got to put somebody in there that will change it.
Yeah, exactly.
And think the way you think and do the things you want them to do.
Well, I know that you're talking about voting and being involved in that, but can you take even 30 seconds and make the spiritual application here for our audience about the answer, what you see as the solution, what needs to happen for America right now?
You know, and that's the encouraging thing I see right now. People are actually kind of waking up and they're seeing what's going on, and they're looking to the Lord. They're going to scriptures. They're finding strength in scriptures. Right. God's word provides us answers for everything. And that's where I find my strength. I go to the scriptures. I find the scriptures that solve my issues. And I know the Lord will deliver on his promises. Yeah. He always has, and he always will.
And you know what's awesome about the scripture as well. And folks, don't take what we're saying this evening the wrong way. You can choose not to believe.
Right.
But don't take what we've spoken and just totally flush it. Accept some truth. Thanks for being with us tonight. We always target the lies by firing for effect with God's truth. See you next week. Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.